Now, a little story time. A couple of months ago, I'm gonna guess maybe 6 months ago, we'll check later on when we compare, I did a little video on Battlefield 2042's maps, putting them all in a map tier list, and I thought now that all of the reworks for year 1 are out and all of the DLC maps for year 1 are out, and before we jump straight into year 2 in almost exactly a month's time, probably if it's going to be the 2nd of June, let's have a look at all the maps we've got so far, and as you can see, they're all lined up here, and put them into tiers from S to D, and then compare at the end to what I put my scores as before, and to see how absolutely wrong I was last time, probably. And I think the first contender for D tier that springs to mind is Hourglass, the one map that hasn't been reworked yet and really desperately needs it. But yeah, that one's going in D tier. It's got really long sight lines, no cover at all. It doesn't look that great in the day in some cases, but with the storm it looks incredible, don't get me wrong. It does have the coolest tornado, which brings it up a few points, but it does have to sit in D tier because it's just an abysmal map to play on with not too many points that I really enjoy fighting over. Next in D tier, I'm sorry, is El Alamein. I think this is the same as I put it last time, if I remember right, and it's basically the same problems all over again. I give it a pass a little bit because, you know, it's a 1942 map, and the cover that's there is going to be the cover that was there 20 or so years ago. But as an infantry player especially, it is a pretty horrific map to play on. And I think that's actually going to do it for D tier for me. But easily going into C tier will be Breakaway. This is old Breakaway. It was massively open, not too much cover, but there were sections which had some good CQB firefights in and had a bit of cover. Like the main actual oil village was pretty decent. It was just those F objectives on top of the cliffs that were absolute hell. Do give a few points for the big spectacle though, and E1 was a really fun objective to jump off, and it made for a really thematic match on Hazard Zone, but yeah, it's a little rough, so it's going in C. Although I do have some, you know, a bit of a soft spot for this one, because I did enjoy the map a fair bit. What's next in C tier? I think one of the easiest ones for me probably will be Renewal, because especially on the old layout, this is old Renewal I'm talking about here, not new Renewal. This one was an incredibly rough experience on most of the parts of the map. Some people forget that over by the orange sector, the sandy sector of the map, that whole half, there used to be objectives at the top of that with a big hill in the middle, perfect for sniping, that was just kind of hell to fight over. It would be absolutely harassed by vehicles. There was just open fields, and there's still that problem on the new one to an extent, but it's nowhere near as bad. We're going to whack Old Discarded in C tier as well. Although it wasn't horrendous, this is the one I have the most, you know, fresh memory of playing because it just got reworked. And yeah, it really got old, especially compared to the reworks and the new maps. You feel it. You feel the fact that it's got not much cover. I used to get it in Hazard Zone rotation all the time, and the cover just isn't there to support those, you know, decent firefights from ranges because you just get caught out in the open. The village was pretty fun though, but it just got completely outclassed by the new Discarded. But we'll get there, we'll get there. I'm gonna unfortunately have to go for Battle of the Bulge. This is one I don't enjoy fighting on much at all. It's absolute vehicle heaven. I do like the village quite a bit, although it suffers from being a little small in places. And the open spaces are just, yeah, a little much for me. I'm also going to throw OG Kaleidoscope in C tier because although it's got some good areas, there are just some objectives that make no sense whatsoever. Like the main data center having the bottom floor to fight over, in theory may have been a good idea, but it was really not the best. The middle floor is a lot more balanced, I feel. And objectives like that skate park looking area, I think it was C in the old map, was just, there's no cover. This is a common theme with the non-reworked maps, but yeah, you really would, and it just wasn't really that fun. Now I'm gonna put Manifest in B tier, I think. This is old Manifest we're talking about here, and it was one of the better launch maps, I'd say, in areas. I enjoyed the, you know, the top hill, and I think the containers led to some pretty fun firefights. And I think with the benefit of hindsight, I prefer it to the rest of the ones I've already put on the list. It also had quite a moody atmosphere. I liked the setting and looking off into the distance, and there was the big seawall with the waves crashing in. Just nice touches like that. And it had a lot of verticality to it. As a Mackay player, I appreciated that. But I also appreciate that some of the players might not really like that, so that is fair enough. I think also in B tier, I'm going to have to go and throw Nosha Canals in there. I know a lot of people love this map, and I like it on TDM, don't get me wrong, but the amount of spawn trapping that I see in normal Conquest is just massive. It is ridiculous. I do like the BF3 maps and all of, you know, their thematic and art direction and, you know, the settings that they take place in, but Caspian is just a better map for me compared to this one. Some people might be up in arms and want to kill me over that, but Nostra Canals is sitting in B tier, at least on 2042. I'm not sure if there's different layouts for Nostra Canals in the other games, but on 2042 it does feel a little one-sided at times. Right, I think New Renewal is actually going to go in B tier as well, because even though it fixes most of the problems, you've still got the really open fields on the green side, and although they've shrunk it down a lot, the orange and grassy side or yellow side still has a bit of that, you know, openness to it. But it's much better, don't get me wrong. It feels like one of the reworks that has had a little less effort put into it, and it's one of the first ones that we got, so it does make sense. And I feel like it needed kind of less fixing than the others. I think similarly to that, following on, I'm going to put Stranded in B tier. Originally, I quite liked it when it came out, but it does have that mix of good CQB and outside combat, but I feel like the map's a little small for 128 sometimes. And I personally don't really like the setting that much. There's a lot of different criteria going into this list, and I think Stranded setting really pulls it down for me quite a lot, because we've already had this dried out lake bit with Discarded when the leaks first came in that this is what we were going to be getting. Some people were a little disappointed, and I get that. I think New Kaleidoscope will also go in B tier. It seems like a common theme that the reworks are going one tier above their old selves, but yeah, it did improve most of the map and added quite a lot of cover, and areas like the new, you know, forward operating base, really love that. Really nice touch with that militaristic vibe, and there's a lot more, you know, tire tracks everywhere and scorched places, and it feels like a worn place. But yet again, it was one of the first, I think it was the first rework that we got, and it was clear that they were still kind of finding their footing with it. But after seeing what they did to Breakaway and Orbital and Manifest and, you know, Discarded now, it kind of sinks down a little lower for me. Right, let's move on to A tier. I'm going to put Discarded, the new version, into A, which has jumped 2 tiers up, and the reason for this is that the map is just a whole lot more concise, which is very good. The new points like the scrapyard, amazing, and overall the flow of the map is much better than it used to be. It has so much more attention to detail with all of these crashed helicopters and destroyed tanks around the map. Everything feels like there's been a war there. I love it. It does have a few issues still, like the ship was kind of untouched by the rework. There's a few more assets like flaming parts of the ship and a few more sandbags and crates, but overall it still feels a little open up there, especially on sea as well. It's a lot more enclosed now, but I don't know, the layout of that point just feels a little wonky to me, and without moving it completely, they couldn't really rectify that, and I understand that. I'm also debating whether to put Flashpoint in A or B, because I actually have quite mixed feelings on it. I think I'm going to go for B. We're going to backtrack a little, because Flashpoint itself is, you know, it's a decent map, and I really enjoyed it on the more tactical modes like Shutdown, but in Conquest it feels a little too hectic for me. But it's nothing, you know, nowhere near as bad as the old Breakaway or the old Renewal or Discarded, but it does just not quite feel there yet. I think it's another thing of a desert map as well that I'm a little bit sick of. Maybe if it was coloured with more greenery, I'd enjoy it a bit more for a bit more, you know, visual variety, because you're looking at this list of maps and you see a lot of yellow, you know, Stranded, Discarded, a bit of Renewal, half of that whole map, LLMAin, and now Flashpoint, and, you know, there's a lot of the same, and I think I was worn out a little bit by that sort of visuals by the time it came around. Maybe I'll have to give it another chance and play it a bit more, but yeah, that's my reasoning for that one. Manifest is going straight in there. The new Manifest, that is. Quite a lot of changes were made to cover, and I really appreciate that, especially on the main hill. It's now more viable to fight up there and actually, you know, make your way tactically around instead of just having a massive clusterclock, for lack of a better word. And the other points have a lot more attention to detail and cover on them as well. It's just a lot more of a fun map to play on, especially in Hazard Zone as well. This one has been pushed so far up my rankings, and I really like it now. Old Orbital is also going in A, because although part of it is a absolute barren wasteland, it's still my favourite map thematically of 2042. I love the setting. It's the first one we saw kind of in the leaks, and it's the map we played in the beta, and it holds a very special place in my heart. The outer areas of the map with all of the cracked roads and things that are evident from earthquakes, the rocket taking off, the massive buildings, the green hills. This map is 2042 perfection, almost for me. If the game was left as it was, and none of these maps were reworked out of the originals, this would still be on top. And I'm going to throw Spearhead into the mix on A as well, I think. Spearhead is a little small feeling sometimes as well, and on Breakthrough there are some very horrible pushes to make, but overall it's a very solid map with more greenery and a nice setting, and you can tell a lot of love was poured into it because of the setting, of course. But overall, I like Spearhead. It is a fun map, it's thematically cool, fits into the lore, and we had a lot of fun doing that whole event on it on the build up to Season 4. That's one of my favourite memories from this game, is doing that event, so big plus on that one. Next up in A is Caspian Border. I do love this map as well, but it does have its slight issues between some objectives being too dominant with vehicles, again, especially playing it on 2042, but it is just classic Battlefield. The tower coming down is always a spectacle, and it's got a really cool location that feels like a real, tangible place. And that is everything for A. So we're going to quick fire S right now and get it out of the way because you can now see what my S choices are. First one is Exposure for kicking off Season 1, giving us a map that has set the bar very high, and I don't think the DLC maps have come close to it just yet after the fact. Got some great verticality, an amazing location that looks really good, some cool lore behind it, an aftermath of a natural disaster, not one on it, which is kind of sad, but it still is one of the best maps in the game by far. Next up is New Orbital, basically improving on what I thought was perfection back when the game launched. Loads more cover on the main runway, a brand new objective at D, which introduces so many more lanes between objectives. Absolute perfection. Love this one. Breakaway as well, I'm going to throw into S, the new Breakaway that is, because the shaders are absolutely incredible on this map. The lighting and the reflections and the way the ice looks is ridiculously good. And it's also gotten rid of all the problems I pretty much have with it. The massive oil silo explosions as well are so cool looking. This one just has so many high points, and the low points of, you know, the big open spaces in the ice sheets, I can kind of forgive because you don't have to be there. You can pretty much avoid them completely now with the new gantries on the side of the oil rig. Improves everything across the board. Love this one. And my last two, basically, both of my reasoning applies to each of them. The two Bad Company maps are the closest to perfection you can also get. Thematically, they're awesome. Cool locations, lots of variety. They feel real and tangible. They've got lots of destruction. Love that. And their map flow is just really solid, and I love to play on both of them. Makes me feel like I'm in a real place, fighting a real war. Big fan. And now with that all done, those are all of my... So there we have it, there's my rankings. But before we end this, I'm going to go look at my old one. There we have it. 4.5k people from 8 months ago. 8 months, bloody hell, have seen this. And we've got, you know, a fair few more maps to go through now. Now, we skip all the way to the end of this, have a look. Because let's look at the bottom tier. I put Hourglass in there, El Alamein. Got those both there now. I also put Breakaway in there, which has jumped up 1. And I think why I put Breakaway in the bottom one was just because the open spaces, but I think a bit fondly of it now. Renewal is in the same tier as it was before, but now Discarded, Battle of the Bulge, and Kaleidoscope have all come down to the bottom when Kaleidoscope used to be an A. Oh no, that's a new Kaleidoscope. I don't think if I put Old Kaleidoscope... Okay, Old Kaleidoscope is also in C. So those two stayed put, but then these three joined them. So I used to rank Discarded a lot higher than I used to, than I do now. Nosha Canals is still in B, but now Stranded has joined B tier, along with New Renewal, which, you know, was stuck in C last time and still is. And now Flashpoint has joined it as, you know, Stranded's there from bloody A tier, because Stranded just came out, and I think because it was new fresh content, I had recency bias for it, so I think it's still up there. That is, what was I smoking to put Stranded at bloody S tier? Now for A tier, you know, we've got New Discarded, New Manifest don't really apply. Orbital was at A tier then as well. I didn't bump it up to S tier. I thought I might have done that. But yeah, Arica Harbor I didn't hold as high, but I've played a lot more of it now, and Caspian is also on A, which it is. So we're pretty accurate there, pretty consistent. And Exposure is still there as well. So we are fairly consistent. We're nothing if not consistent, but a few things have juggled around. But overall, there you have it. And I think to the poll that I put out to you guys as well, you guys said that the DLC maps were your favorite, and I can kind of see that. None of them have fallen below B tier, and most of them are, what, A and S tier? So pretty solid. But thank you for joining me. If you disagree with my choices, please do let me know. I'd love to hear what you think, what I've done wrong, because there's probably a lot I've done wrong. Let me know your choices, where these maps will rank for you. Once again, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one.